What does this all mean for our future?
Scientists have produced a nuclear fusion.
The world's largest lasers.
Nuclear scientists call it the Holy Grail of clean energy.
This is the record-breaking reaction.
Nuclear fusion is the Holy Grail of energy. Clean, safe, and effectively limitless. The same reaction that literally powers the sun. There's just one problem. For 75 years, it's been 30 years away. Almost always here, but not quite. Then a few years ago, that changed. For the first time, we pulled more energy out of a fusion reaction than we put in. And almost nobody really noticed what that meant. So I flew to a fusion company outside San Francisco to answer one question. How close are we really? And the answer actually really surprised me. I'm Ricky, and this is 2-Bit Da Vinci. This video is brought to you by Roborock. To understand why suddenly within reach, you have to start at one building. Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory sits about an hour east of San Francisco, and its day job is designing America's nuclear weapons. It's also home to the National Ignition Facility, the NIF, with 6 decades and roughly $30 billion of public money chasing a single goal: to recreate the reaction that powers the sun.
And the experiment they have over there is they take this world's largest laser, physically largest laser. It is 3 football fields long. It's the most energetic laser in the world too, which means it's 2 megajoules of energy for each pulse. 2 miles south of here, that's the facility they run. And they take all that laser energy and they shoot it at a tiny little fusion target.
Fusion forces the lightest atoms, hydrogen, to merge into helium, releasing a staggering amount of energy. But there's no risk of meltdown, and there's no long-lived nuclear waste to have to manage. Plus, the fuel is something you can just pull out of seawater. The lasers don't hit the fuel directly, they fire into a tiny metal can. And by the way, real quick, we've noticed only about a third of you guys are subscribed. It's completely free and it really helps us out. So if you think we've earned it, hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss our future content.
So a full-scale, power plant-scale fuel target. Do you want to hold this in your hand?
Yes, I do.
So that you can see it's about 2 centimeters, about 1 inch high. You know, that tiny...
This is a 3D printed mock-up.
Well, yeah, this is just a mock-up, but you can see that BB, that's a peppercorn size. So that's a shell of carbon that contains the fuel. So that's one component with the fuel inside. Yes, 2 components. You see a little tent? In this case, it's a bit of saran wrap from Costco, but you know, that holds the tent inside this can. Now, in reality, this will be a metal can, what we call this hologram, basically an X-ray oven. So laser beams enter through one side and the other and heat the inside surface. So it goes from red hot to white hot to X-ray hot. But you start off already at that size of a little BB, you're going to crush it down to about the width of a human hair.
Do it right, and the fuel hits the temperatures of the sun's core and fuses. For 75 years, we couldn't get more out than we put in. That is until December 5th, 2022, where we put 2.05 megajoules of energy in the form of a laser and got back 3.15 megajoules of energy out. For the first time in history, nuclear fusion was net positive on energy, and they called it ignition.
They hit the milestone, right? And I kept expecting to see some spin out from the lab, right? Some company, some startup get created that was like a spin out with all the IP that was gonna go now commercialize it and turn it into humanity's energy source. And the funny thing is, I never saw that press release. I kept waiting for it, you know? And that's when I met Dr. Annie Kreitzer, who's the lead designer of the NIF experiment that achieved ignition. What she said was, yeah, I've been wondering the same thing.
So the physics were settled. We'd proven a star can burn here on Earth, and then commercially, almost nothing happened.
Except a bunch of smart people, they looked around, they looked at the NIF, which is the experiment, the National Ignition Facility. They looked at it and they said, oh, this doesn't seem very economical. And so they kept focusing on all these other ways to try to achieve fusion. And so that's when I said, well, you know, I am a business person. Why don't we start looking into this together, right?
Everything about this, from the lasers and timing and fuel manufacturing, is just brilliant engineering. And it reminds me of one of the smartest pieces of tech in my entire house, our sponsor Roborock, and this, the Saros 20. Everyone wants great vacuum performance, like the 36,000 Pascal suction motor on the Saros 20. But there's way more to it. Most robots write at a fixed height, but your carpet and rugs are all different. So Roborock engineered the Saros 20 to climb on, lift its chassis just over an inch, then lower it while monitoring its own brush motor current, settling at whichever of its 8 ride heights feels the best. Too high and the air rushes in around the edges. Too low and you'll bog down the motor and stall the brush. The Saros 20 uses a solid state LiDAR with no moving parts, shooting infrared light and timing the bounce back. With Starsight sampling 21,600 points at 38,400 hertz, 21 times higher than a spinning laser, it decides whether it should detour, hug an edge, or lift and climb. It lifts at 3 independent points, clearing a stacked double threshold of nearly 3.5 inches, and remembers it for next time. Roborock's FlexiArm mop swings out on an arm when the sensor spots a wall or corner. The dual mops spin at 200 RPM, and on a tough stain, the robot lifts its Omni wheels to drive weight down through the pad, applying from 8 to 13 newtons of force. Then it docks, washes the mops at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, and dries them at 131 degrees Fahrenheit, loosening stubborn dirt, food residue, and greasy stains. Now, I've tested a lot of robot vacuums, and they get better every year, but this is the first one I'm not constantly having to rescue, and it delivers amazing cleaning performance. So if you've been waiting for a robot to take cleaning off your plate, check out the Roborock Saros 20 today. Links in the description. Huge thanks to Roborock and you. Now back to the show.
So what we did is we made an old classic 2x2 matrix. And on this matrix, we put on the vertical axis, we basically said, has net energy been demonstrated? Very simple, no and yes. Is this approach thought to be economical?
Almost every approach lands in the unproven half, the tokamak, Z-pinch, and the rest, still chasing physics that never have fully materialized.
But then suddenly in 2022, laser indirect drive, boom, is up here. Net energy has been demonstrated. The physics regime is well understood. And so the question for us wasn't, is it economical today? No, of course it's not. The question for us was, no, could it be made economical?
Everyone else is trying to prove fusion works. Inertia already knows it works. The only question left is why it costs so much. And turns out the answer comes down to 2 things, the laser and the target. So for that reason, let's start with the laser.
So if you think about it, these flash lamps that power the NIF, huge vacuum tubes. So each one of these is 8 feet tall, 4% efficient, 500 watts, and they can only fire about 3 times a day because they have to cool down and all sorts of stuff. And the way we're building this laser that is way more powerful, way more efficient, and way more compact is doing exactly what every other part of our society has done already, which is to go from vacuum tubes to semiconductors. This array is about 18 inches tall, is 60% efficient, and is currently, this one here you're looking at is 50 kilowatts, but the next gen ones are going to be 100 kilowatts and can shoot 10 times a second. It is smaller, it is more powerful, and way more efficient. And that's exactly the heart of our laser.
10 times the efficiency in a fraction of the size. The hardware already exists. It's just wildly expensive because almost nobody makes these diodes.
Some of the applications and industries that use
It's like some industrial applications. The big one though is directed energy weapons, actually. So if they're trying to shoot down drones or something, but it's a tiny market in the grand scheme of things. In fact, our plant, our first of a kind power plant, will require 500 years of global output of these diodes.
to be able to. Yeah.
Right. So clearly what we have to go do is scale up the manufacturing of these laser diodes, and in doing so, bringing down the cost by multiple orders of magnitude.
And that scarcity is the opportunity. The diode is expensive only because the market for it is pretty tiny. So a large enough order could bring those prices down the same cost curve that solar and batteries have come down. Forcing that scale up is the heart of this entire strategy. The second problem you can actually hold in your hand. It's a fuel target made by hand with a price tag that makes fusion sound forever impossible.
So we have to go through 10 a second, or about give or take $1 million a day. And so people said, oh, well, if you're going to blow up $2 million worth of fuel a second, how are the economics ever going to work?
On paper, this seems like a non-starter, but there's more to the story.
Well, we looked at it and we said, well, hold on, wait a minute. These are made by hand. Each one is unique and different. They literally have serial numbers on them. No. We've got a word for this, actually, in the commercial industry. These are called prototypes. So what do you do when you have a prototype that you like and now you want to bring it to market? Well, you go figure out how to make it in a factory.
And bringing prices down from $200,000 for a single target, handmade for a science experiment, to $1 that is shot 10 times a second for hours and days at a time is no small feat. For one, it would be built in a factory and fully automated, spreading fixed costs over billions of units instead of 12. We've done this before, though, with cars, chips, and phones, just not with fusion targets.
And it turns out, you need some precision when you make these things, but these are not very hard to manufacture things in the grand scheme of things. In fact, the precision of a Lego block is higher than the precision we need for most of the parts of a fusion target. So when you think about how hard are these things going to be to manufacture? Well, Lego blocks are actually harder to manufacture.
So this is less physics lab and more of a factory being born, where I got to try the two hardest jobs in fusion. First, making that $200,000 pellet cheap. And it starts as a plain ball of silicon.
So you've got to go and figure out what is that material that I can coat carbon onto, then I can dissolve it away. Turns out that material is silicon. We're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to chop it up into little cubes, and you want to smooth these out. So you take these cubes and put them in a shaker, and each corner of that cube will be knocked off and put it into a polishing machine and just polish, polish, polish. So now we have actually what is the most expensive part of the whole system.
That's
So little
lightness to it.
Right. And so now at the step, we've got a little mandrel, as we call it, the starting point. So we take the silicon BB and put it into a carbon coating machine. And so what we're developing here is how do we take that super fast coating technology from those other industries and apply it to the spheres where we know how to do it slowly, and how can we speed it up? So this is what's called microcrystalline diamond or high density carbon. You can see it's starting to coat, but it's not that great. It's okay, so you learn, it's maybe not that way. You coat it a different way. Let me use this one, for example. This nano-coated material. It's now starting to look, even by eye, smoother and more clearly coated than the previous one was. So now we have the carbon coated on the silicon. Use a laser to drill a tiny little hole, a tenth of the width of a human hair, to then dissolve out the silicon and inject the fuel. Seal up the hole, and away you go.
Now, this entire process is hand done today, but a production line would be the ultimate goal.
So this is that tiny little hole that was drilled.
Really?
Yeah, human hair will be about this big on this scale. This is about 10 microns wide. A human hair is about 100 microns wide, something like that. Yeah. So what you're seeing here is a tiny little straw. On the screen, you can see a blow-up of it, and then filled with some material you can see right on the end.
The fuel rides on a film so thin, it barely exists, and it has to hold.
The fuel target, that little pellet that's held in the center of the cam. And the question is, as that's flying through space, being injected into the power plant, what happens to that tent? You can see here it's moving around all over the place. This is not a good target. It's moving, it's flexing a bit too much. Now, so you'd want something that is super thin so it doesn't perturb the sphere. If it gets too flexible, that pellet will just bounce, oscillate back and forth, and you won't know precisely where it is. This one you can see is much, much more reserved. This one's not moving at all.
No.
But if it gets too stiff, it will just snap.
Finding the one material that threads that needle is just trial and error, and they handed it to me to test out for myself.
So these are really thin films that we're testing. So what we try to do is make a sandwich of this, then the film, then another one of these frames, so that we can put this in the instrument and give the grips something to hold on to so they don't just completely slip out, so we can have an effective test. Yeah. So what I'm going to have you do here is take one of these little films. We just want to see how different materials react at different temperatures, different thicknesses. There's a whole host of different properties we want to test. So what you got to do now is thread this through the gap in this clamp up here. So since we're measuring the strain on this, we have to get the cross-sectional area.
We cooled it to minus 50 degrees and pulled it until it snapped.
Suspense is killing us.
Yeah.
This could be a miracle material that never
yeah. If it doesn't fail, I think we've got to...
We may have to declare a trade secret.
Yeah, something great. There we go.
Oh, okay, failed.
Yeah, so then you see it fail.
And that breaking point is the point that we're looking for. It's how they learn what each material can tolerate. But by playing with different materials, they can find something strong enough to keep the actual fuel cell target from moving too much while not being so stiff and brittle as to be able to break entirely. So that's the fuel cell. How about the delivery mechanism? To make this work, we're talking about shooting these fuel targets 10 times a second because gravity alone would be too slow. and pulverizing it and getting nuclear fusion and heat out of it repeatedly all day and night in a base power station, a base power nuclear fusion power station. That to me is absolutely bonkers.
So the team asked themselves, what exists in the world where you can fire something, 100 meters per second or so, like our fuel targets, and you can do it many times per second. Turns out that technology is a Nerf gun. So here we have a really high-end, maybe $100, I don't know, Nerf gun that's going to fire a little pellet. And you can see, it's actually not that different in size to our fuel targets. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw some little dots on the back end of this Nerf pellet. That's going to send a pellet flying past a laser beam. You can see this laser beam is hitting a sensor, and as the pellet flies past, that laser beam will be chopped, so the sensor will say, I'm not seeing anything anymore, and it will tell this white light to flash on the back of the target, and we'll take an image using that camera of exactly where in space this is, and in the real power plant, that will tell the laser beams to hit it exactly in this part of space.
A Nerf gun and a 10,000 frame per second camera demonstrating the job of a fusion injector for about $100. Now, of course, in the real plant, they're going to use a purpose-built dedicated air gun.
This will give you a sense of actual power plant speed, like how quickly these fuel pellets would be shot. Ready? Oh my God.
10 hits a second over and over. And that's what turns single explosions into a working power plant. The NIF, in comparison, fires a few times a year and holds its target still on a stick. This has to hit a moving one forever. And get this, the fuel is nearly free because the plant makes half of it as it runs.
You get all of this trouble of these fancy fuel targets, these big powerful lasers, the fusion at the center.
World's most advanced science.
Exactly right. In the end, you boil water. Okay. So, and then that turns a steam turbine generator. And the reason you do that is because people know how to connect that to the grid. And so you can plug and play. You go to a power station that's currently using coal or nuclear, this is a plug and play system for those kind of plants, fits directly onto the grid, by design.
A gigawatt, a city's worth of power from a box that drops onto the grid we already have, running on fuel that is quite reasonably priced and affordable and abundant.
If we want to see fusion energy become a reality in our lifetime, what's the most likely way that's going to happen? Is it going to be that, after decades and billions of dollars and many of the smartest people on the planet trying, that one of the startups is going to be the one to take one of these approaches and suddenly move it up into the category of demonstrated? Or is it more likely that we can take the demonstrated results of the NIF and actually just go make it economical?
None of this is ready yet. A $1 target is a bet they have not reached yet, right? And the efficient laser still has to be proven at full scale, ensure that it can endure long life cycles without large levels of maintenance and everything else in continuous industrial applications.
Before 2030, we expect to break ground, and we expect to be having first energy around mid-decade.
This is the part that an engineer gets really excited, right? You prove something could happen. Like, we could do this. We could make a car. Okay, right now it's crazy expensive, but what could we do to drive those prices down? That's the part of the optimization game that I think is really fascinating. And knowing that nuclear fusion is in that realm is news to me. I always thought we were in this wildly theoretical, particle physics and, quantum type of environment. But if we were actually closer than I thought, it's pretty amazing. The hard part, proving a star can burn on Earth, is actually behind us. Did you know that? I'm kind of curious. I mean, I remember reading about this in 2022, and speaking with Jeff, I remember thinking like, oh man, I wonder who's gonna, like fusion.com, who's gonna start buying the domains and start commercializing it. And it's been kind of quiet. So I can't wait to see what comes next. But what do you think? You've probably heard a lot about fusion. What do you feel about this? How interesting is it? And are you surprised with a 3 football field laser and fuel targets that were actually closer than you might realize? Sound off in the comments below. All right, that is a quick look at inertia nuclear fusion technology. Absolutely awesome stuff. I love this stuff. Thank you so much for watching. Check out this video, and until next week, I'm Rick with Vinci. Thank you so much for watching.